My parents secretly installed tracking software on my computer to control my savings account. You? Handle money? Don't make me laugh. You'll never amount to anything. But they had no idea. The girl they mocked was about to expose everything and bring the whole family crashing down. I checked my bank account on a rainy Tuesday and found $12,437 missing. The notification from Chase blinked on my screen as I sat with my second mug of instant coffee, the smell of damp cardboard boxes still lingering in the corner of my small apartment. I blinked twice, convinced the rain outside was distorting my vision, then opened the app again. The number didn't change. $12,437. Gone. Mom always said I wasn't mature enough to manage large sums of money. I used to laugh. Not anymore. My first instinct was to refresh, as if that would magically fix the error. But it wasn't an error. My savings account, which I hadn't touched in months except for that automatic deposit every paycheck, was suddenly missing more than half its contents. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a few $100s lost in rent or food. This was a full quarter of my annual living expenses. I yanked the laptop closer. The sound of the rain smacking against the window grew sharper as I muted the Spotify playlist. I needed to focus. No new debits, no transactions listed, just a withdrawal. A raw deduction logged at 2:13 a.m. with a strange notation. External transfer. To who? I rubbed my temples. I hadn't sent anything out. I lived alone, didn't owe anyone, and hadn't clicked any sketchy links. I didn't even shop online that often. Then I noticed something else. Login history. Most people don't check their online banking login history, but I'm not most people. Years of coding taught me how easy it is to trace digital fingerprints, and if someone had broken in, they would have left a trail. The last login before mine wasn't me. It came from an IP address I didn't recognize. A quick search traced it to Bellevue, 10 miles from my apartment, and 2 blocks from my parents' house. A cold sensation unfurled in my spine, like ice water trickling down my neck. I clicked open a second tab, this time pulling up my personal email. There had been no warnings, no alerts about suspicious activity, nothing from the bank. But my computer had been slow lately. Sluggish. I chalked it up to overworking the memory, maybe needing a system update. Now, though, it felt different. Intentional. 4 years ago, just before I started college, Dad insisted I let him help monitor my spending. Just for the first semester, he'd said, until you learn to manage finances. I remembered him setting up the bank account on my laptop, remembered him entering a long password I wasn't allowed to see. At the time, I thought it was protective. Responsible, even. After that semester, I thought I changed everything. Passwords, accounts, even moved to a different bank eventually. But habits die hard. I'd logged into the same laptop with a lot of reused credentials. Was that enough? I opened up the activity monitor and scanned for unfamiliar processes. Something flagged my attention. A process with no name, consuming very little memory but never turning off. Suspicious. It had a randomized name like sys32_xdemon, something an average user might never notice. I pulled up terminal and ran a few commands. My palms started to sweat. It was logging keystrokes. Not just logging, but transmitting them. The code was simple. Too simple. It was designed to stay invisible, to sit quietly in the background and collect every word, every password, every search. My name, my credentials, my accounts. I sat frozen, rain hammering harder on the glass behind me. I remembered leaving my laptop at my parents' place during winter break last year, just for a few hours while I took a walk. It had been sitting on the kitchen counter. I closed the terminal window with shaking fingers and stared at the blinking cursor. There was no doubt anymore. This wasn't just a breach. It was a setup. Someone had installed this. Someone with access. Someone I had trusted. A dull rage bloomed in my chest, battling the fog of disbelief. Was it possible? Could they? I didn't want to believe it. But the IP address. the timeline, the missing money, the voice in my head whispering, "You know who it is." I pulled out an old encrypted USB from the drawer. It was dusty, barely used since college, but it held a suite of forensic tools I'd learned to use during an elective on cybersecurity. I inserted it into the port, determined to trace everything. No more denial, no more benefit of the doubt. Whoever did this knew me too well. The rain kept falling, steady and cold, as I whispered to myself, I didn't install this. Who the hell did? When I confronted Mom, she said, "Of course I know your passwords. I'm your mother." She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, her voice soft, almost sing-song, as she stood beside the coffee machine in their immaculately polished kitchen. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, glinting off the fine china that hadn't moved since the housewarming party 10 years ago. Everything looked pristine, just like always, everything except me. I stood across from her, drenched from the morning drizzle, still in my hoodie and jeans. My words caught in my throat. "You what?" She didn't flinch. "You've always been a bit careless, sweetie. You used to write your passwords on sticky notes. You remember that?" I didn't respond. My hands were balled into fists at my sides. She poured herself a cup of tea, added 1 cube of sugar, stirred slowly. "I'm your mother, Nora. It's not like I'd ever do anything to hurt you." "Someone withdrew $12,000 from my account," I said flatly. She took a sip. "Yes, and you probably clicked one of those phishing links again. With all that screen time and no sleep, how could you not make a mistake?" The rage bubbled up, tight behind my ribs. "There's a keylogger installed on my laptop, and the last IP address to access my bank account is located 2 blocks from here." Mom didn't blink. She just smiled. "Darling, you've always been a bit dramatic." She set her cup down gently, the porcelain clinking just enough to make my skin crawl. Her eyes, so gentle in appearance, didn't match the steel behind them. "Family means trust," Dad said, entering from the hallway like he was stepping onto a stage. "Remember that paper you signed when you were 18? The financial authorization? You asked us to help." "That was for college tuition, 1 semester, 4 years ago." "Still," he said with a mild shrug, like he was shrugging off a parking ticket. "We never closed the loop. You never told us to revoke access." I looked between the two of them, my throat dry. "You were supposed to protect me." Mom reached out and brushed a strand of damp hair from my face. "And we did. Do you have any idea how much interest your savings earned thanks to our investment strategy? That Tesla stock you were too scared to buy? We did it for you. I never gave you permission." She gave a little sigh. "You're tired. All that freelance work, those deadlines, it's no wonder your mind is spinning." I turned away, willing myself not to scream. "Gaslighting," my brain whispered. "Textbook, undermining my memory, reframing events, cloaking control in the softness of maternal concern." "I know what I found," I muttered. "There's spyware on my computer. I traced it." "Well," Dad said, calm as ever, "if there is, maybe you installed it by accident. With all your coding, it's easy to hit the wrong key. You were always so curious. Remember the time you broke the home Wi-Fi trying to install that firewall?" I stared at him. "That was when I was 14. And you've only become more unpredictable since then." His tone was cool, detached, like a disappointed investor. Mom laid a hand on my arm. "Let us help you, Nora. We'll call the bank, reset everything. We can clean this up as a family." My legs felt numb. The perfect kitchen around me started to feel like a stage set, every item placed just so. Every smile, every glance, part of a carefully choreographed show. Had it always been like this? I followed them to Dad's study, where he pulled a printed financial report from a locked drawer. "We keep backups," he explained smoothly. "It's safer." He handed me the paper. It was a snapshot of my bank activity, nearly identical to the online log I had reviewed earlier, but this one included details only I could access. Custom labels, personal notes, Print settings I had created on my home computer. Watermark placement I'd used once. Only once, last month. My pulse thudded in my ears. "You see?" Dad said. "There's no need to panic. We've all been managing this together." I scanned the bottom corner of the page again. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m., September 2nd. I hadn't printed that page, but someone clearly had. Jenna didn't even hesitate. "Someone's spying on you." She said it while hunched over my laptop, the glow from 3 different monitors casting sharp shadows across her angular face. Her fingers moved with precision across the keyboard, navigating layers of logs, script traces, hidden processes. I sat a few feet away on her couch, biting the skin around my thumbnail, the anxiety thick in my throat. I'd been holding this storm in for days, and now it was pouring out in quiet keystrokes and terse confirmations. "Look at this," Jenna said, turning one of her screens toward me. "There's a program in your background processes. Silent Ghost. Ever heard of it?" "No," I breathed. "It's not mainstream. Niche-level spyware, but powerful." She tapped the screen. "Stealthy, low memory consumption, survives reboots. Whoever put it there knew exactly what they were doing." Jenna's apartment was a sharp contrast to mine. Modern, clean, fortified. Cameras in the corners, extra locks. Her own firewall system and an encrypted private server that even her landlord couldn't sniff. She didn't trust easily, and it was clear she hadn't let her guard down since the data breach at her last job, the one I helped her clean up when her company's HR system got raided from the inside. Now, our roles had reversed, and I was the one holding a fragile thread of trust in both hands, trying not to let it snap. "How did they even install that?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jenna leaned back. "Not remotely, that's for sure. This isn't clickbait-level malware. This," she pointed, "requires physical access. Admin rights. That means someone plugged in a drive and installed it directly. They needed full control." I swallowed hard. "So, family." She nodded. "It's the only thing that makes sense." I let my head fall into my hands. Jesus, I was hoping I was wrong. Jenna softened her voice. "You're not. I traced the install date in the system logs. Look, 2 weeks ago. Your logs show the USB port was activated at 10:19 p.m. on August 31st. My breath hitched. That was the night I visited my parents for Dad's birthday. "Did you take your laptop with you?" "Yes. I'd brought some freelance work I couldn't put off." She raised an eyebrow. "Leave it unattended at any point?" I thought back. The kitchen, the dining table, the backyard patio. I had gone outside to take a call from a client. It had only been 10 minutes. "My dad," I whispered. "He asked to borrow it, just to look up a documentary on YouTube. I thought it was harmless. He's terrible with phones." Jenna gave me a look that wasn't judgment, just quiet understanding. "That's when he did it." I shook my head, trying to mentally rewind. I saw him using it. He looked so casual. Said something about how impressed he was that I'd finally gotten into a field that paid. I thought he was being nice. "That's how they do it," she said. "Make you feel safe. Lower the bar." I let out a bitter laugh, but it caught halfway. He smiled at me and said, "You trust your old man, right?" "Maybe you're just stressed," Mom said, her smile like a noose. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and lies. It was the place I used to go to read, to code, to feel normal. Now, sitting at the table across from my parents, it felt like a trap with warm lighting and acoustic music in the background. A ceramic mug of chai steamed in front of me, untouched. "I'm not stressed," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm being stolen from." Dad gave a soft chuckle, the kind he used when I mispronounced words as a child. "Paranoia is one of the first signs of overwork. You really should consider taking some time off." "I have proof," I said, pulling out the screenshots from Jenna's diagnostic scan. "There's spyware installed. It's called Silent Ghost. It was uploaded on August 31st. while I was at your house. Mom sipped her latte and set it down with perfect grace. Sweetheart, Jenna's always been a bit intense, hasn't she? You remember that time she called the FBI because someone cloned her parking pass? That wasn't paranoia, I snapped. She uncovered an actual internal breach at her job. Dad leaned back, folding his arms with that academic smugness he reserved for students and, now, me. A woman who can't control her emotions can't control her money. I flinched. That phrase. It was one he had used before, back when I got my first job offer and wanted to manage my own finances. He'd said it then like it was a joke. Now it felt more like a warning carved in stone. You still think I'm imagining all this? I asked, voice rising. Even when I can prove it? Maybe, Mom said gently. You're just overwhelmed. You're juggling freelance projects, working late, skipping meals. You've always been sensitive. Sensitive? My voice cracked. You invaded my life. You drained my savings. And you smile at me like I'm the problem. Dad leaned in. It's not uncommon, Nora. In cybersecurity, there's something called technophobia-induced delusion. People who work too closely with systems begin to hallucinate attacks. It's a known pathology. I blinked. You're quoting pseudoscience. He shrugged. Or maybe I'm just trying to help you calm down. I felt the edge of the table dig into my palms. The world around me blurred. Baristas called out names, milk steamed behind the counter, and yet all I could hear was the thud of my heartbeat in my ears. I felt smaller by the second. For a moment, I considered it. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I'd read too many threat reports. Maybe I'd misread the log. Maybe Jenna was wrong. Maybe the storm wasn't outside. It was inside my head. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Jenna. They've been transferring money offshore. Check this, attached. A screenshot of an encrypted routing number linked to a Luxembourg-based holding company. And a note. The bank activity aligns with the silent ghost triggers. It's real. My chest tightened. My thumb hovered over the screen as the truth clicked into place like a key in a lock. I looked up slowly. Mom was still smiling, reassuring, gentle, maternal. But I saw it now. The corners of her mouth too precise, the eyes too still. No confusion, no empathy. I looked into my mother's eyes and saw calculation, not confusion. My name was used to open an account in the Cayman Islands. Jenna didn't say it gently. She didn't soften the blow or pad it with disclaimers. She just slid the screen toward me, an interface I didn't recognize, dense with IP logs and hash verification layers, and pointed. There, she said. Account holder, Nora M. Ellison. Established July 2022. Originated from a device in Seattle. I stared at the name like it belonged to a stranger. That's not me. I know, Jenna said, her tone flat. But it's your name, your social, your digital certificate. Someone cloned your entire ID. The paperwork's ironclad. If we weren't sitting here right now, I'd think you did it. The private cybersecurity center we were sitting in buzzed quietly in the background. Fluorescent lights, 0 windows. Jenna had pulled a favor. An old colleague from her days at Nuvex Tech had agreed to help us off the books. I hadn't even caught the man's real name. He just introduced himself as Wick. Wick was mid-40s, bald, soft-spoken with the kind of quiet competence that made you lean in when he spoke. Right now, he was scanning through a sandboxed simulation of the Silent Ghost payload, isolating the commands that had triggered the international transfers. It's not just money laundering, he said, eyes flicking over lines of code. It's identity hijacking, digital obfuscation. They're building a secondary persona, under your credentials. My stomach clenched. Why? To separate the crime from the criminal, Jenna answered. When the feds knock, they won't find your dad's name on the documents. They'll find yours. I tried to breathe, but the air in the room had turned heavy. I need to stop this. Today. Wick tapped a few keys. You're not alone, but this goes deeper than you think. He brought up a second interface, transactional overlays mapped across shell companies and blind trusts. Meet Lighthouse Consulting, he said, registered in Nevada, managed offshore. And guess who authorized the founding agreement? He clicked, and a familiar signature blinked onto the screen. David Ellison, Jenna said aloud. Your dad. My vision narrowed. My name on a fraudulent account. My father on the legal trail. My mother smiling while I broke apart. How long has this been going on? I asked. At least a year, probably more. Wick replied. They funneled chunks at irregular intervals. Silent Ghost would initiate the command remotely from your device using admin credentials. No trail leading back to them. Clever. I sat back. My skin felt clammy. If I didn't check my account that day? You'd be bankrupt by Christmas, Jenna cut in, and probably in jail by March. The silence between us was sharp. Jenna finally leaned forward. We need to go to law enforcement, but first we need evidence they can't erase. Backups of backups, cryptographic timestamps, a timeline so tight even their lawyers can't wiggle through. I looked down at my hands, suddenly remembering the time Dad told me to stop biting my nails. It was a habit unbecoming of a future professional. That was in high school after I'd finished building my first website. He'd always had a way of shrinking me. Like every achievement was borrowed, every boundary negotiable. But now, this was erasure. They weren't just stealing my money. They were deleting me. I looked up at Jenna, fire building in my chest. I want to fight back. She nodded. Then let's start tonight. Wick was already pulling together an offline server for backups, a clone of my system, and a secure air-gapped laptop. As I slid the decoy laptop into my bag and stood, I caught my reflection in the black screen. My face, pale but resolute. This wasn't just about theft. It was about erasing who I was. ChatGPT, Janoi, Ko Moi Haitai Kwan. All in my name. All offshore. The words echoed in my head as I sat hunched over the glowing screens in Jenna's borrowed server room. The hum of hard drives and cooling fans was constant, like the breath of some mechanical god watching me come undone. Jenna had pulled a few more strings to get us deeper access, and now Marcus, a data analyst with a calm voice and eagle eyes, was leading the crawl. These aren't just dummy accounts, he said, swiping through a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn. They're active, each one with transfers from and to multiple shell companies. We're talking Singapore, Belize, Dubai, even Mauritius. And all in my name? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He gave a slow nod. The IDs match yours, not just name, social, birth date, passport scans. How the hell did they get that? My voice cracked. Jenna didn't look up from her console. They've had access for years, Nora. Since college, remember? They probably made copies when you submitted paperwork for financial aid. FAFSA, bank forms, tax documents. I rubbed my temples, trying to contain the rage that kept crawling up my spine like a swarm of fire ants. Tell me again about Gondola Limited, I said. Marcus tapped a key and pulled up a folder with flagged transactions. Gondola Limited is a front. We've seen it show up in a dozen other investigations. Narcotics, tax evasion, corporate siphoning. It's under watch, but it's slippery. It splits money into fractional payments routed through crypto wallets and microloan programs. The Cayman account was just the beginning. He clicked open another document, one that made me physically lean back in shock. That's my signature? Jenna came over and stared. It's a scan, she confirmed. But see the tilt? That's not your natural hand. And the form uses an old address. Your college apartment. The document was a financial authorization form, one that gave permission for account creation, fund transfers, and digital delegation to a third-party legal entity. It was ironclad and completely forged. They had to fake the notary stamp, I muttered. They did, Marcus said, zooming in on a distorted seal. And badly. This notary's license expired in 2016. The fury inside me gave way to something colder. Fear. "Marcus," I said, "can you estimate how much money's been moved through these accounts?" He tapped a few more commands. Lines of numbers flickered, totaled, cross-referenced. $247,619, he said. Over 2 years. I couldn't breathe. "I haven't even touched my savings except for my rent and groceries," I whispered. "I know," Jenna said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "But the system doesn't." "What do you mean?" Marcus turned toward me, his voice lower now. "They've done it so cleanly, so consistently with your digital ID, that if this ever hits an audit, or worse, a subpoena, the government might think you did it." The room blurred around me. Not from tears, there weren't any left, but from the crushing weight of reality. I wasn't just the victim. On paper, I was the perpetrator. My name was tied to an international money laundering scheme that could destroy my career, my reputation, my freedom. I grabbed the edge of the desk to stay grounded. "They wouldn't let it go that far," I said, almost to myself. "They couldn't." Jenna didn't answer, because she knew, deep down, that they already had. I filed the report under a fake name. It was a Tuesday, cloudy again, and the coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and stale croissants. I sat at the far end, close to the window, half concealed behind a laptop with a sticker that read, "World's Okayest Developer." I had wiped the machine that morning, freshly installed Tails OS, booted into a secure environment, and tunneled my traffic through 3 layers of public VPN relays. To anyone else, I looked like another remote worker struggling with spreadsheets. But on my screen, I was drafting a federal whistleblower report that could set the entire Ellison household on fire. The email address was a throwaway. Randomized string, no recovery option, no linked phone. I opened Proton Mail's encrypted portal and copied in the first block of data. Shell company flowcharts, IP logs, screenshots of offshore wire transfers, and most damning of all, code snippets from Silent Ghost tagged with execution timestamps matching my father's last visit. Subject line: whistleblower evidence, financial laundering via family compromise. I hesitated for half a second before hitting send. Who was I becoming? I sipped my coffee. Cold. 20 minutes later, the inbox pinged. RECEIVEDFBI, Financial Crimes Division. The message was terse. "We acknowledge receipt of your documentation. Initial indicators align with patterns under active investigation. In order to proceed, we require a declaration of your identity under whistleblower protection. Failure to comply may limit federal recourse." I stared at the text, heart hammering. Jenna's voice echoed in my mind from 2 nights ago. The best whistleblowers stay invisible. At first. I wasn't ready to expose myself. Not yet. Not when the people I was exposing still had access to me, still had legal power, social power, and worst of all, the illusion of family. I opened a second encrypted folder and selected a few key files. A screencast of Silent Ghost activating remotely, a clip of Marcus confirming my name had been used to open 12 illicit accounts, and a redacted version of the financial authorization form with the forged signature. Second message. Subject line: follow-up. Partial proof enclosed. I added a single sentence in the body. I cannot disclose identity until secure channels are confirmed. These files are a fragment of a larger repository. I sent it. Then I sat back and waited. 5 minutes? 10. Then, your submission has been noted. We will initiate a preliminary review. Do not interfere further. I closed the laptop slowly. Too late. I already had a plan, and it had just begun. The first move was never meant to stop them. It was meant to unnerve them, to shift the terrain. While they thought I was spiraling in confusion, I'd filed the first crack into their polished facade. But I wasn't naive. I didn't trust the FBI completely. Governments could be slow, misdirected, or worse. Compromised. That's why I hadn't sent the full drive. I still held back the biometric trail. The offshore crypto routes, the raw logs with my father's IP mapped across 6 states. Those were my insurance policy, my trump card, and I wasn't done playing. Dad asked me to sign a new NDA. I smiled. He had no idea. The lobby of Lighthouse Consulting didn't feel like a real office. It felt like a stage. Polished marble floor, pristine leather couches that no one had ever sat in, and an air of silence too clean for any company that actually did business. The only sound came from the trickling of an indoor fountain and the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I walked in wearing my most formal blazer, a neutral tone and no logos. Nothing memorable. My hair was pulled back tight. No earrings, no rings. I looked like someone coming for a tax meeting. Safe. Predictable. Harmless. The receptionist glanced up. Young, nervous, clearly not trained. "I have a 10 a.m. with Mr. Ellison," I said, offering a tight smile. "Family business." She nodded, hesitated, then buzzed something under the desk. A door clicked open down the hall. Brandon was waiting just past the glass corridor, arms crossed, a smirk glued to his face like he'd been practicing it in the mirror. "Nora," he said with mock enthusiasm. "Didn't think you'd show?" "I always finish what I start," I replied. He didn't offer a handshake. We walked in silence past empty rooms with frosted glass and nameplates that meant nothing. Compliance, risk assessment, investor relations. Not a single computer powered on. Not a single phone rang. My father stood behind a glass desk in the corner office, wearing a tailored navy suit and a gold tie clip shaped like a ship's wheel. He looked up as if I were interrupting some grand venture. "Nora," he said smoothly, "thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat. He slid a thick envelope toward me. "I know the situation has caused stress," he began. "The media, the rumors. We're simply asking you to reaffirm your discretion. For everyone's sake." I opened the envelope. Inside, a new NDA, 3 pages, dense legalese, and a final clause stating I agreed not to pursue civil or criminal action against associated entities or individuals involved in financial structures between 2020 to 2023. My fingers didn't tremble as I flipped through it. "I see," I said. "So, this is the part where we rewrite history." He didn't flinch. "This is the part where we prevent it from being distorted." I lifted a pen from the table, poised it, then looked up. "Just one question," I said. "Where was this concern for my well-being when you installed surveillance software on my laptop?" His mouth twitched. Just slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not," I signed. "Not my real name, just a variation, with a subtle loop in the R that only Jenna and I would recognize later." The hidden mic pinned to the inside of my jacket collar was already capturing everything. Jenna would get the raw audio file within the hour. As I rose to leave, Brandon fell into step behind me. "You know," he said in the elevator, "if you keep digging, there won't be anything left to bury." "Is that a threat?" I asked without turning. "It's family advice." His breath smelled like cheap espresso and old arrogance. The elevator dinged at the lobby. I stepped out without saying another word. I walked calmly past the front desk and into the coffee shop across the street. There, in the bathroom stall, I opened the document folder I'd slipped out during the meeting. Copies of internal memos signed by my father, branding instructions for offshore accounts, instructions for fund routing through Gondola Limited. I scanned everything using the secure app Jenna had built me, uploading it into our shared encrypted vault. Then I messaged her. "Encrypt everything. Then disappear for a week. No excuses." Her reply came instantly. "Already gone. You okay?" I stared at the mirror. My reflection didn't blink. They think I signed their NDA, but I signed my freedom, and the next phase had already begun. Local news called me a disgruntled daughter with mental issues. The words felt like acid on my skin. I sat in the dark, the only light in the apartment coming from the blue glow of my television screen. Rain tapped against the windows like slow applause, mocking me. My reflection shimmered faintly across the TV surface. Pale, tired, haunted. The anchor's voice was steady, professional, cruel. This evening, in an exclusive report, new documents have emerged suggesting that Nora Ellison, the woman accusing her parents of money laundering, was, in fact, hospitalized in 2019 for paranoid delusions. According to sources close to the family, she had been prescribed antipsychotic medication and was advised to avoid stressful environments. They cut to a clip of Brandon's spokesperson, a smug PR man in a perfect navy suit, saying, "The Ellison family has always supported their daughter, but they are deeply concerned about the false accusations and her deteriorating mental state." I couldn't move. My hands were clenched so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had gone white. The screen shifted to show what they claimed was my medical file. It looked official. Even I had to blink twice. Patient was admitted voluntarily. The reporter read, after experiencing prolonged anxiety, financial delusions, and distrust of close family members. They had forged everything. Names, dates, prescriptions. They hadn't just tried to steal my identity. They were rewriting who I was, turning me into the villain of my own story. My phone buzzed. Jenna. Just saw the segment. You okay? I stared at it for a moment. Then another message came through. Jenna. No word from the bureau. Still radio silence. I swallowed hard. I had been waiting for days. The first report, the encrypted files, the audio from the lighthouse office. I had sent them everything. Every breadcrumb, every document. The FBI's initial reply had been polite but distant. Since then, nothing. I grabbed my phone and called the special contact number they had sent me in the first reply. It rang. Once, twice, a click. Federal Bureau. A flat male voice answered. This is regarding case reference 331KL7, I said quickly. Submitted last week. This is Nora Ellison. A pause. We're still verifying source credibility, the voice replied. Thank you for your patience. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. Source credibility. They thought I was the unreliable one. And now, thanks to my family's slander, I looked like exactly what they wanted the world to see. Fragile, unhinged, dangerous. I got up and paced the room, barefoot on the cold wooden floor. Every step echoed too loud, like I was walking through a courtroom where the verdict had already been read. I opened my laptop. The news segment was already clipped and posted online. The comments were pouring in. Typical trust fund brat drama. Bet she's doing this for inheritance. Mental health is serious. If her family tried to help her, she shouldn't be attacking them. And then one that froze me. Wow. My mom used to say, if a girl can lie to herself, she can lie to the world. Hope she gets help. I slammed the laptop shut. How do you prove you're not crazy when the people tearing you apart are the ones who raised you? Who know exactly how to gaslight the world, because they spent years perfecting it on you. I typed a message to Jenna but deleted it. What was there to say? I went to the mirror. My reflection stared back. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin too pale, lips pressed in a flat line of exhaustion. I didn't even look like someone who could win a war, just someone trying to survive the next news cycle. They're winning. I'm running out of time. My dad forgot one thing. I still had the kitchen smart camera. It was a small, almost laughably outdated thing. White plastic, stuck above the fridge like a lazy afterthought from our tech-obsessed renovation phase. Installed years ago when my mother was paranoid about housekeepers stealing silverware, it had been silent for months, maybe longer. Forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. The day he borrowed my laptop, I'd been too tired to question his intentions, too trusting. But something about the memory had been nagging at me. His sudden arrival, the way he'd smiled, how he'd insisted on using my laptop to check the YouTube channel we subscribed to together. He never did things like that. Not without purpose. Now, weeks later, with half the world believing I was unstable, and the FBI still treating me like an unreliable narrator in my own life story, I was done playing defense. I booted up the companion app on an old tablet I'd kept in a drawer, dust coating the screen like ash. It took a while to reconnect to the network at the old house, but eventually the device came online. A small green dot blinked. Last activity, August 17th, 2023. The day. I skipped through the time blocks. Each gray segment represented idle hours. But then, between 2:14 p.m. and 2:31 p.m., the feed came alive. There he was, my father. He entered the kitchen, not with the casual grace of a man grabbing a snack, but with the coiled focus of someone on a mission. The camera's angle wasn't ideal, but it was enough. I saw him place my laptop on the counter, reach into the inside pocket of his coat, and pull out something small. Metallic. A USB drive. He looked over both shoulders, paused, then plugged it in. My breath caught as I watched him lean in close, tapping through windows, his face tightening. He removed the USB once, inserted it again, then froze as if he'd heard something. The timestamp blinked in the corner. 2:23 p.m. He hit enter, then smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was satisfaction. Completion. I rewound it again, until I could see the exact moment his expression shifted, from effort to accomplishment. I called Jenna. She picked up after one ring. Did you find anything? You tell me, I said, hitting record on my screen and sending her the footage. There was silence on the line for 30 seconds. Then, that's it. This is it. He installed the spyware and the camera saw everything. Can they say it was faked? I asked. Number IoT devices embed metadata with server logs. This is visual, unedited, time-synced. Unless he has God's admin key to your cloud server, this is locked. My hands shook as I opened a secure browser. I reassembled the dossier. Screenshot logs, transaction records, and now the video. I uploaded it to the FBI case portal with a direct tag to the case number they'd given me weeks ago. This time I added the subject line. Visual proof of illegal access and identity theft. Urgent. I hit send. The wait was barely an hour. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up. This is Special Agent Kershaw, the voice said crisply. We received your video submission. We're opening the case. Just like that. After weeks of silence, after gaslighting and false records and PR campaigns designed to destroy me, all it took was 37 seconds of video. A man caught in a lie by his own daughter's forgotten device. I sat back in the chair, a strange cocktail of adrenaline and exhaustion flooding me. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to run. But I did none of those. I just whispered, let's see how they enjoy being watched for once. The courtroom was full, but when I walked in, my father wouldn't meet my eyes. The rows were packed with unfamiliar faces, reporters scribbling into notepads, FBI agents shifting in their suits, lawyers whispering. But all I saw was him, seated stiffly at the table on the left, jaw tight, refusing to look at me. My mother sat beside him, hands clasped like she was in a prayer circle, eyes darting nervously. And then Brandon, arms crossed, expression unreadable. If guilt had a uniform, they wore it well. My lawyer leaned toward me. Stay calm. We have enough to crack the shell. Let them make the noise. We bring the facts. I nodded, gripping the small flash drive in my palm until my fingers went pale. That drive carried more than just data. It carried 2 years of betrayal, of gaslighting, of my entire life slowly being erased without me noticing. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, but now that I was here, it felt too quiet. The judge entered. All rose, then all sat. The preliminary hearing began. Not yet a trial, but public and on record. The Ellisons, through their lawyer, repeated the same narrative from the smear pieces. that their daughter was troubled, paranoid, and manipulated by outside parties, that her allegations came from a place of emotional instability. I let them talk. It was a tired song by now. Then came our turn. My lawyer stood, voice clear and unwavering. Your Honor, we will present authenticated evidence gathered through both private cybersecurity analysis and verified video footage from an IoT device registered under the witness's name. Gasps rippled across the room when the lights dimmed and the screen came to life. Jenna had stitched it perfectly. First, the system logs from Silent Ghost, showing the installation time, access records, and admin logins. Then the footage from the kitchen camera. It was quiet at first. Just a video of our old kitchen. The rain pattered faintly on the window panes. The date at the corner read, March 15th, 2023. My father entered the frame. He looked around, made sure no one else was home. He pulled a small black USB from his blazer and walked toward the counter where my laptop sat open. He connected it, opened a file folder. His shoulders tensed slightly. Then he typed, deliberately. After a moment, he leaned back and muttered, "No one will know." The courtroom froze. I didn't turn to look at my parents, but I felt the temperature shift. Brandon's foot twitched. My mother closed her eyes. The FBI representative shifted forward. This video was independently validated and time-stamped. In conjunction with the financial logs tying these actions to subsequent offshore transfers, we believe there is sufficient cause to proceed with a formal investigation. My lawyer added, "We also have transaction documents linking Mr. Ellison to shell companies used in laundering schemes. All documents have been encrypted and secured under third-party custody." The judge nodded slowly, making a few notes. Then came the pause. That silence you hear only once in a courtroom, when everyone realizes the ground has shifted. For the first time, I saw fear in my father's face. Brandon stormed out before the judge could finish his sentence. The thud of the courtroom doors echoed behind him like a gavel from some higher judgment. For a moment, no one moved. My mother's knuckles whitened on the edge of the bench, her lips twitching in silence. My father didn't even flinch. He stared forward, jaw clenched, eyes burning holes in the wood grain of the table in front of him. The hearing had ended, but something far bigger was breaking apart. I stood near the rear, lawyer beside me, watching from a distance. We hadn't spoken since the judge adjourned. There was no need. The evidence had spoken for me. The FBI agents had nodded. The court clerk had avoided looking at the Ellisons. And Brandon? He cracked first. In the courthouse hallway, it all unraveled. "You lied to me," Brandon shouted, his voice raw. Cameras flicked to life, journalists swarming like bees. "You said it was just protective paperwork? You said it was to help her. And now I find out you used my name too? I signed things I didn't even read because you said it was safe." His tie was crooked, face flushed, hands trembling as he jabbed a finger toward our father. "You made me part of it. What the hell kind of parents do that?" My mother tried to reach for him, but he yanked his arm away. Don't touch me." Reporters shouted questions, microphones shoved forward. My mother's face collapsed in on itself like paper soaked in water. "We didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, eyes wide and unseeing. "It was just to keep the money in the family, just to help her. She wasn't ready." Her voice broke. She wobbled, clutching her coat. The security guard nearby caught her just as her knees buckled. Someone called for medics. The press caught every second. I didn't move. I stood still, watching from across the room as the illusion finally shattered. The Ellisons, once the perfect upper-class family from the suburbs of Seattle, now unraveling in front of the cameras, blamed by their own son, pitied by no one. My phone buzzed. "Jenna. DOJ just launched a criminal inquiry. You did it." I took a long breath. Somewhere in the sea of noise and cameras and shouting, I felt a strange silence descend inside me. Not peace, not yet. But something colder, cleaner. Later that night, the headline flashed across every local news feed. Seattle heiress breaks silence, exposes family's $250,000 laundering scheme. My photo wasn't included. Just an image of the courthouse steps, a blurry shot of Brandon mid-shout, and the body of my mother slumped in a wheelchair being rolled away by a medic. I didn't send the video. I didn't issue a press release. I didn't call any outlet. I didn't have to. The truth had its own mouth now. It would speak louder than I ever could. I turned off the screen. I didn't need revenge. I had the truth. They froze every account under my name. But I was already one step ahead. The notification came at 6:12 a.m., the kind of digital red alert that would have once sent me spiraling. But not this time. I sipped my coffee in silence as the system blinked. Account access suspended by federal order. One by one, the ghost accounts, opened in my name, used for their schemes, were quarantined by the court. The balance sheets, the transfers, the forged authorizations, all frozen in time, like bugs caught in amber. But the real me? The real Nora Ellison? She had already left the building. Jenna had warned me. The Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation will freeze everything until they can trace the threads. That includes your stuff. So split now, or drown with them. So I did. 3 weeks before the hearing, I'd transferred every legitimate asset, my software, my freelance payments, my actual savings, into a holding company I created. Ellison Independent LLC, a name I hated, but a barrier I needed. And now I sat in a modest, glass-paneled office in downtown Seattle, across from a lawyer who charged more per hour than I used to earn in a week. She was worth every cent. "Everything is secure," she said, flipping through a thick stack of papers with confident fingers. "The government won't touch assets held in the LLC. You declared them long before the investigation, and nothing links them to the laundered funds. In the eyes of the law, you are no longer financially or legally attached to your family." I exhaled slowly, letting the words wash over me like a tide pulling something old and heavy away from shore. "Nothing?" I asked. "Nothing. You're clean." My phone buzzed again. Another federal update. IRS had frozen the accounts tied to Lighthouse Consulting. The shell was collapsing, and still, no charges were filed yet. The system moved slower than pain, but it moved. I stood and gathered my coat. I didn't feel triumphant, just intact. Like a woman who had walked barefoot through broken glass and now finally stood on clean tile. Then, before I left, I opened my email and typed a final message. To Brandon Ellison. Subject: Done. You chose your side. Now live with it. No threats, no insults, no explanation. I closed the laptop, tucked it into my bag, and walked down the hallway as the elevator chimed. My reflection in the brushed steel doors was unfamiliar. Hair tied back, posture straight, face clear of the anger that once lived there. Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds, but not yet raining. I stepped onto the sidewalk, past 3 reporters without a glance, and crossed the street as the light turned green. I walked out of the building, free, for the first time in years. Jenna brought me a cupcake. "Happy Freedom Day," she grinned. It was lemon lavender, my favorite, and she'd stuck a single crooked candle in the middle like we were kids again. She didn't sing, thank God. Just placed it gently on the little coffee table in my new apartment and sat beside me like it was the most ordinary Thursday in the world. But it wasn't. I looked around at the space I now called home. A small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building in Capitol Hill, full of windows and green plants and shelves lined with books I'd actually read. On one wall, I'd taped up childhood photos I'd found in a shoebox. Me on a swing set, holding a puppy, wearing a wonky paper crown at age 7. Images untouched by manipulation, untouched by expectation. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. Jenna nudged me. "Then don't say anything. Just eat the damn cupcake." We laughed. There was no news alert today, no knock at the door, no voice calling me paranoid or mentally unstable or irresponsible with money. Just quiet, warm, real. You know, I said, picking at the edge of the wrapper, I keep thinking about how many other people live through this. Women. People who never get a court hearing or a lawyer. Who don't even know they're being stolen from because it's called family. She nodded. It's all dressed up in care and love. We're just protecting you. We're just helping. Until they've drained everything. I looked down at my hands. They were steady now. I want to start something, I said. A fund. For women like that. Maybe legal aid. Maybe just a hotline. Something. Jenna stared at me, then smiled slowly. You know what you just did, right? What? You made your own family. I blinked. She leaned back on the couch, eyes on the ceiling like she was picturing something far away. Real family is the people who protect you, who don't need to own you to love you. You got out, Nora. But you didn't just walk away. You're turning back and reaching out for the ones still stuck. The words settled over me like a quilt, warm and stitched with quiet understanding. I reached for my laptop, not because I wanted to work, but because I felt something buzzing in my inbox. The kind of instinct that had guided me these past few months. I opened it. Subject. I saw what you did. Can we talk? My daughter needs help. No name. Just those words. But it was enough. I leaned back and felt something stir in me. Not fear, not caution. Something lighter. A sense that maybe for the first time in years, I was no longer reacting. I was becoming. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was my beginning. ChatGPT Janoi. Hojelai chotoi sutsauho. I turned it into power. The lights in the small conference room dimmed as the final slide on the screen faded into black. The air was thick, not with noise, but with silence. The kind of silence that clings, that lingers in the bones long after words have stopped. I stood behind a cheap podium in a room no bigger than my childhood living room, facing 50 strangers who only knew me as Alexandra M. My real name wasn't needed tonight. My face wasn't on the poster. There was no bio, no accolades, no press release. Just one sentence. A survivor shares how financial manipulation starts at home. And yet, every pair of eyes on me shimmered with recognition. I had told them a story. Not all of it. Just enough. About a girl who trusted her parents, who handed over bank access and passwords because she was told she wasn't mature enough. About how they installed spyware. About the offshore accounts. The forgery. The gaslighting. The courtroom. And about the day the truth won. Not with screaming, not with revenge, but with quiet, indisputable proof. When I finished, I let the silence breathe. Let it do what it was meant to do. Break the cycle of denial. In the back, a young woman barely 20 raised her hand but didn't speak. She stood instead, trembling, then simply said, "That was my mother, too." Her voice cracked in the middle, but she didn't sit. She didn't hide. Her words hung in the air like a lit match. And suddenly, a second voice joined in. And mine. Then another. And another. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity. Behind the curtain, I caught Jenna's eye. She stood next to the light switch, nodding, not proud, not smug. Just steady, like she always was. She mouthed the words, "You did it." The moderator leaned forward and asked gently, "Would you like to close with anything?" I stepped closer to the microphone, letting my hand rest on its edge like it was something sacred. For the first time that night, I allowed my voice to drop its shield. "The bloodline ends here," I said. "I build something better." No applause, not right away. Just breath, and the faint sound of someone crying softly in the third row. Then I stepped back. I didn't wait for thanks. I didn't stay for handshakes or praise. I turned, adjusted the strap of my bag on my shoulder, and walked toward the side door. The hallway was dim, but I didn't mind. I walked slowly, letting the hum of old fluorescent lights guide my way. And as I reached the exit, I paused, only for a second, looked up, smiled, and walked into the light. The courtroom lights had long dimmed, but the echoes of Nora's testimony still lingered. In headlines, in hushed conversations, in the quiet relief of those who had once been silenced. She had been framed as unstable, manipulated by her own blood, erased from her identity, yet walked out not just proven innocent, but powerfully reborn. Justice in her case was not a thunderous crash, but a calculated, unwavering storm, precise, undeniable. When injustice is met with unshakable truth, even the most elaborate lies collapse like paper. Nora didn't need revenge. She became the mirror where her family saw themselves undone, and the torchbearer for others still trapped in the dark. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like, share, and subscribe if this story moved you. Comment 1 if you feel seen, or 2 if you believe justice still has a longer road to walk.